One of the things that I was doing is I was drinking too much, trying to mask the pain that I was going through with alcohol, right? So I needed to stop doing that. You mentioned cutting people off. Yeah, absolutely. Some of the people that I was indulging with some things with, those relationships had to be tossed to the side. So you do have to do things in order to have you in the space that you need to be in to get to where you want to be.
Hey, welcome back to the Oz Shift podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Trucks. And as always, we got another phenomenal guest. So those of you guys may know I played years ago when I was a young man. I had way less beard, hairs that are gray, and my knees didn't pop whenever I stand up. And man, that's a fraternity of amazing humans. And today's guest is a person who is at the top of that fraternity. Like they're like one of the leaders. They literally are a Hall of Famer. And this for me it's a duality, right? It's for the conversation. One, I understand the intangible mentality behind getting to that level. Just getting to it is one thing. Then being able to stay for a long period of time. Then being named to 9 Pro Bowls like this person has, and then getting a gold jacket like this. This is the top of the top, cream of the crop of the best in the world and in the history of the world. So the person we have today has climbed to the top of that level. But the cool thing is we're going to find out what was going on behind the scenes a little bit. They're actually author of a new book called Blessed by the Best. We're going to talk about that a little bit. But this person, man, if you guys tune in and listen, I want you to listen to the spaces between the words, the things going on in the background, because that's the gold. That's where you're going to extract the things that allows this person to be so successful. And now take this message of what he's learned and press it on and pass it on to the rest of the world, his kids, his legacy, and all that fun stuff. So without further ado, I'm welcome to the show, Brian Dawkins, man. How are you?
I'm absolutely blessed, bro. Absolutely blessed. Can't wait to get this going.
Me either, man. Seriously, like the cool thing about my gig is I started this whole podcast with like, I want you to talk to cool people. I want a reason to talk to cool people. And so I started doing it. And then we're like 300 some episodes. It became this cool little thing that built up. And so we've built this ability to have this conversation. As much as I'm going to benefit, it's really for people to tune in and find access to behind the scenes minds of like, people that they look up to. And I try to pull little different nuggets out, which we'll get into in some time. But the first question I always ask, you can answer whatever way you want. The question is, say I'm walking around town and I happen to sit down next to you. I have no idea who you are. You turn and for some reason start talking to me. Why should I listen to you?
Wow. Why should you listen to me?
Yeah, why should anybody listen to you?
Why should you listen to me? That's a good one. Because if I did that scenario that you just suggested, I would really want to be listening to you more than me talking. That's really my personality. My personality is really to listen more than I speak. I don't necessarily need the spotlight. I know how to work in my space. And when it's time for me to be on the spotlight, I know what to do with it, but I don't need it. So, but to go down the same path of why we're having this conversation, being blessed to have had some of the success that I've had in my life, I understand the significance of how you frame a situation or reframe a situation and what that situation can bless you with in the present to have your future that much more potent. So me being blessed to then have that bus right here, Hall of Fame, is one of the things that I can show you that with the mindset that I developed growing up where I grew up in Jacksonville, Florida, now having that wisdom, I need to share that with somebody else. So that will be the thing. If I had to go and condense it, it would be that I've had that measure of success by the perspective and the reframing of the things in my past.
Yeah. And that's big because I don't think people naturally do that, right? It's not this natural. I guess for people who will experience stuff, we don't reframe it quick. We go, this is what happened. It's this great statement I love. And it goes, there's no meaning to a moment except for the meaning we give to it.
Amen.
So things happen, let things rock and roll, and then we go through life. So I like to go back to the levels of like getting people to get the grasp of who you are, because we know what you've done, right? We know what's going to accomplish all this cool stuff. In your own, like, I guess, recollection of it, like what are some of the early aspects of your life? Could be childhood, could be college, who knows, that where you started seeing the development of like you turning into who you are now? Because you could have went, I'm sure, off a different path. Like statistics probably show from wherever you're probably from, like there's some cats that went a different way. What was some of those moments that kind of shifted you towards where you're at now?
Man, I've had in my life growing up, I lost two of my good friends to the streets. And so that's the neighborhood that I grew up. I've had one of my friends who was a little bit older than me. He lost his life to drinking and driving. And the other one I've lost, he was older than all of us, but he was shot up and paralyzed from the waist down. So that was the neighborhood that I grew up in. And so some of those things, as you know, when you grow up in those environments, those things become not necessarily normal, but they aren't as, how do you say it? They aren't as,
don't stand out probably as much.
Yeah,
not like
you don't get necessarily crazy familiar with things, but it is a familiar thing to hear a gunshot and not kind of duck if it's not close to you. And so that's where I grew up. Wasn't as bad as that sound. It wasn't all the time like that. But again, me saying what I just said could give you an understanding of how my neighborhood was in my mind, right? And so that's where I grew up. And from that environment, I was also one of the smallest kids in the neighborhood. So I always felt I had to fight, and I always did have to fight. So I had to fight, and I felt that it wasn't supposed to be me. So the Hall of Fame and all of the things and success that I had, it wasn't supposed to be. It was supposed to be so many other people, because once again, I wasn't the biggest. Matter of fact, even in my own household, my older brother, who's 3 years older than me, he was having success. So it was supposed to be him. So many other people. And so I've always said it like this, and I said it in my Hall of Fame speech, that the majority of success that I've had in my life has come on the back end of pain. So that pain has taken me to the different heights of which I wouldn't have reached had I not seen and took the disrespect I felt in areas and utilized it to grind. So instead of me taking something of failure or someone looking down on me and saying, well, I agree with them and I'll, have a pity party. No, I took that as fuel for my dog on fire. So you're saying I can't do that? Got you. I'm going to show you what I can do. Right. And that was one of the main ingredients to my success, being able to take those negative things and using them for my fire, right? But as I grew, I understood the power, and this took some while to truly gain this perspective, that I was giving people too much power. So I was giving them, like, I'm going to show you, I'm going to show you, I'm going to show you. No, what I was really doing, and what I developed a mindset to see now, is I was proving me right. Not just proving them wrong. So I began to empower myself with that thinking. I'm going to go prove me right. By using what you just said against me, I'm going to go grind outwork everybody, because that's what I got to do, because I'm smaller than you, right? And now I'm going to have a measure of success.
Yeah. It's interesting because I feel like those emotions, I think we all can have those emotions, right? There's always that level of whether it's a comparison that's proper and improper. Because I get that. I had that same mentality growing up too. Like I was just that little skinny, kid who, like, foster kid growing up, didn't get much. But it's interesting you said I didn't think it was me, because I had that same thing. I'm like, I'm a foster kid. Like 75% of inmates in prisons in America are former foster kids like me. Like, I'm not supposed to do much. Where did you get the ability to? Because even to say I'm supposed to, I got to outwork that, you still have to have some belief of like, I could do it. If you don't think it's supposed to be you, where did you drag that ability to kind of connect the two and say, I don't think it's supposed to be me, but I'm still going to work towards it? Because most of the time it's a lack of belief for people. Because I know a lot of people are probably like, I get pissed. People say I can't do it. But then you went, okay, not supposed to be me, but it's going to be me. Yeah.
And this is where I lean heavily on my father. I was blessed to have my father in the household. Blessed to have my mom and my dad, and my father, who was not just a male in the household, but he was actually a father. So he was a present dude. And so one of the things that my father taught me is that whatever you start, you finish. When you give your word to something, you finish it. Not only do you start it, not only do you finish it, you go as hard as you can the entire time, and you stay coachable the whole time. This is what he taught me in one of the times that I had to move from running back and then play center, which I hated, right? But I couldn't quit. I had to continue to play. I had to do that for 2 years. I'm really condensing this story real small here. But the principle that he taught me, though, in me listening to my dad, I did not want to disappoint my dad. So I'm going to have a good attitude. I'm going to go to this practice every day doing something that I hate to do. But here's what it also did, because I'm also a fighter, right? I'm also going to outwork you, right? And so it developed a true worker in me. So in conditioning drills, right? Conditioning was one of my times to show the coaches I should be in another position. So while everybody, we're all tired, right? But in my mind, this is an opportunity for me to show the coaches I need to be doing something different. So I'm lapping guys, right? So I'm running just that hard to be lapping people. But again, it was developing that mindset that I'm going to grind and outwork whomever. But here's what it also did. And I see it and say it like this now, that it developed in me that I'm going to give more than is expected of me in whatever endeavor that I step my foot in, right? So all of that came from what my dad told me believing and trusting in his instructions to me, and then me going out and going full speed all into it. Now that's a part of me. So that part of me went to junior high, went to high school, it went to college, it went to the league. So that was a major principle in my life of how I fight. The other one was from my mom. She told me that, it's in the book, she told me that you don't start the fight, you finish it. But you don't just finish the fight. You fight in such a way that they have to pull you off the person. That's how you fight. Boom. So now I have how I'm fighting life. So my dad taught me how to grind. My mom told me how to fight.
Different game. It's funny. I tell my kid the same thing. My son had a situation in school where some kid was picking on him, and my wife shot down to the school to kind of help him out. I was like, never do that again. Like, he needs this hardship. I can't rob the kids of the hardship. And I said, listen, son, you don't start the fights, but if kids touch you, like, you finish it. He'd been in jiu-jitsu before. He didn't want to use it. I'm like, no, you use it, man, but not the start. And so like 3 days later, I get a call like, Mr. Trucks, you can come down. Your son's in the office. Like, for what? Well, for fighting. So I get down, I find out what's going on. Kid had been pushing him again. So next thing you know, they find him choking the kid out. They have to pull him off. And I go, I'll take care of it. Took him to ice cream. Like, he went there, hung up. And it wasn't like to condone the fight, but it's like, hey, you stood up for yourself, man. The kid never bothered him again.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That was the principle of my mom. And the other principle that I took and I understand of why you fight in that regard, where I grew up, is that you get the label of, you don't want to fight him, right? You don't want to mess with him. Like, even though he didn't necessarily win the fight, he wouldn't stop. So you don't want to fight him.
Yeah,
so
you don't want the easy target.
You want to have that type of reputation, so to speak.
I dig it, man. I feel like you want to be like, I was kind of like him, same thing, especially when you're a smaller guy. I grew up a smaller, skinny guy. Like, you don't want to have people testing you, man. The more they test, too many opportunities. So I love this because I get the idea, what you actually talked about. So this whole podcast is called Our Shift. It's about identity shifts. And I love how you said that mentality went to high school, went to college, went to the pros, because that's a way you identified, which means that if you fell out of alignment, we weren't having that. So they were like, even if you probably had a day or two where you're like, I didn't do great. There was no way it was 2 days. Like, it wasn't even 2 hours probably, right? No. It's an alignment thing. As you progressed, saw that kind of climb, did you see areas? And our whole thing we talk about also is like guilt, because guilt's tied to like how we show up as humans daily. I may do things that leave me feeling a little bit guilty. I ate the candy bar and I shouldn't have. I didn't take my wife out, right? Do you know areas in your life where you might have done something that led to a little bit of guilt, missed a workout, didn't do the thing, maybe missed a tackle that led you to greatness from that? Are there any moments you can go, along that journey, like, oof, I didn't show up there perfect, but it made me show up here differently?
I'm extremely hard on myself, first of all. So I'm brutally honest with what I see. When I'm watching film, one of the reasons I was able to have success in Philadelphia is that the fans never expected greater than me than I was expecting of myself, if that makes sense. My level of excellence was so revved up that they may have been upset about that one mistake, but I was livid about those 3 others that they didn't see, that I knew about, right? So I wasn't necessarily a perfectionist, but I expected a whole lot of myself, once again, because in my mind for the longest, and because it was kind of just me, I felt believing I can do it, and maybe a coach or two, that in my mind, the negative part of me was like, you're not really what you think you are. You're what the rest of them think you are. So in my mind, if I don't do these things this way, I can easily not make the team, or I can easily get supplanted my position. Does this make sense?
It'll make sense for sure. Yeah, I totally get it.
In my mind, when I do make that mistake, I'm extremely hard on myself, and I can't wait to get back to practice. I can't wait to get back on the playing field. I can't wait to get back to the field on Sunday to let them know that I'm not a repeat offender. I won't be doing that same dumb mistake again. I'm going to correct that, and I'm going to be better going forward because I recognize that mistake, and I'm going to fix that doggone mistake. Because ultimately, because I love my teammates so much, another thing is I never wanted to let them down. So like all of these things was going through my head as I was playing. And, you know, it was one of the reasons, again, that I was able to not just play in Philadelphia, but to have the love affair both ways, me and the fans and fans to me, of how I conduct myself in that way.
That's big. And I do get it. I think there's this, what somebody one time told me, said that my level, when you're at a high level, my level of good is better than most people's great. So like where Pope, like you say, you're not a perfectionist. There's this mentality to drive to like, I'm going to do my thing. But even my good's better than most great. So if I show up good, it's one thing. Great, it's out of this world kind of thing. And it shows up, right?
Let me say this too, man. Like I use for a lot of my years anger.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was just angry. Like you keep saying it's everybody else, but it's not me. Even when I was having a measure of success, it was still other people that was always given more benefit of the doubt, so to speak, right? And I felt that. Mm-hmm. Even how I got to Clemson, people think that I was All-American. You probably think the same thing, right? That I came out of high school, highly recruited, and Clemson wanted me, right? No, how I got to Clemson was they wanted my teammate who would have been like a 5-star in today's rating scale, right? Yeah. And he basically called them and said, if I come to Clemson, he has to come with me. That's how I got to Clemson, right? So again, that's not necessarily me doing these things and them seeing the great things that I do, and then them projecting me and having me on the team. No, they said they wanted him so bad that they brought me along with. Now, I didn't know it at the time. I thought they actually wanted me at the time. But looking back on it, I see why I was sometimes treated the way that I was treated, right? And so because of that, I had resentment and I had anger building up inside of me. And a lot of times I used the anger. But because of that, I began to, I had anger issues because I didn't know how to utilize that properly. And because I wasn't talking about my feelings with anybody, I was just bottling it up, right? Mm-hmm. And over time, just like either you can use the analogy of pumping air in a balloon, or you can use, I like to use having a pot on the stove and you turn the heat up, but you don't let the steam out at all. But at some point, it's going to take that small thing by somebody saying or doing something, and all of that steam and all that anger explodes on that person, right? So that's what was happening to me. So I had to come to grips. Yes, I can use these things to fuel my fire, but I need to talk about the pain and the internal hurts that I have going on in my life. And that didn't happen after my rookie year.
Yeah, most people don't, man. And we're not taught to. Well, so first question, was that something that your father taught you, or just something you had to figure out? Or like, where did that acknowledgement? Because most people don't learn that. Yeah. No,
this is something that when I went through the depression and the self-harm thoughts that I had my rookie year, that is where all of this came from. I had a lot of pressure on me going into to play in the National Football League, coming from where I came from. And again, in my mind, not a lot was expected of me, right? So I still have that burden. This is me now. This is nobody else anymore. This is 100% me now, feeling like that, at any given time. Matter of fact, throughout the first couple of years of my career, during cut season, I still was thinking I could get cut. That was my mindset. So I didn't want them to ask for my playbook, right? So during training camp, because I didn't know that if you get drafted in the second round that, you'll be around for a little while. No, in my mind, if I don't go out and perform, if I make too many mental mistakes, if the coach continues to have to correct me on stuff, then I can get cut at any time. So that was a fear thing too. So I got an anger thing. Now I got a fear thing creeping up, right? So now all of these, and I'm not talking to anybody about any of this stuff. So again, that's the pressure and build. Those toxins begin to leak into other areas of my life, into my relationships. And then I finally had some things happen that my beautiful wife, Connie, and then Emmett Thomas, my defensive back coach, basically tag team and grabbed my hand really and said, no, you're going to talk to somebody because you have to talk to somebody, because I wasn't going to do it on my own. And it was during that time that this version of me woke up. That this person that you're talking to right now began to wake up, to begin to talk about some of the things that I needed to talk about, to get some of those things out of me, and to be, as I call it in my book, more emotionally available to the people in my life. And that was the trend, the journey, that the beginning of that journey for me was that after that rookie year.
Not doing that, because I get the idea of that. I mean, I've done that, to be honest. I have a whole journey of my story too, but I know those moments of like, I'm about to share stuff that I've never shared before. Did you ever have the fears of judgment or perspectives that are different or people not accepting it? Yeah.
Well, when I was going to the counselor, that's different because it's just me and him. It's still painful. It's still embarrassing. Yeah. And this is what I tell people now when it comes to, I call it cerebral wellness. So my cerebral wellness is important to me. And I needed to talk to that individual about it. I needed to talk to that individual about it. So my stuff was not for everybody. Yeah. The stuff that I was working through, about to tell, it wasn't for everybody. It wasn't for me to go on national TV and say, hey, this is what I'm going. No, that wasn't for everybody. Again, this is me now. I can't speak for how other people do it. It was for that moment for me to recognize first of all, that I can do it. Yeah. It's possible. So in my neighborhood, you suck it up, deal with it, rub dirt on it. A man don't show you don't show emotion as a man. Suck it up, deal with it. You got to be the backbone. You got to be strong, right? Yeah. Right. And listen, there are things you can be that way about, but not when it comes to these internal hurts, man. And so I agree. That was the process for me, once again, to begin to speak up and speak out about things that were going on with me.
Because that energy, it's there, and it will come out in one way or another. And for a lot of people, it comes out in an unexpressed way, or comes like you talked about, man, that pressure bust pipes, and it comes coming out in a way it shouldn't come out. It's funny you go into this and you said, I saw myself different, because we have what's called the shift method and how we work our clients through stuff. And a lot of the stuff is identity, right? As I'm sure you might have navigated multiple identities, probably even after the game when you got done. Now as the Hall of Famer, it's different. Like, I'm different. I'm somebody, there's a nuance there, but there's 3 stages. It's see, shift, sustain. You talked about the C stage. I just see what's going on. I understood them differently. I'm like, oh, this has to change. But the hard part for a lot of people is, let's say they see, which is actually one of the harder parts. But let's now go to the next stage and okay, I see this. How did you actually go into the stage of going past and actually making these shifts for who you talk to, how you showed up? Because I'm sure that journey is difficult. And most people have no idea what it looks like. They've done it before. It's never been some part of their whole, like you said, lifestyle, upbringing. How did you navigate those shifts? Part of it sounds like, is the people. I got the right people around me. What if I don't have the right people? What if I feel like I'm solo? What if I don't have the outlets?
And see, that's the thing. When you don't have the outlets, or you think, I take that back. When you think you don't have the outlets,
there you go.
You do, right? Yeah. There is at least one person that you can think of that you know that you can have a conversation with, that one person, right? Now, even that one person is not for you to dump everything you have on that one person in the first conversation. Yeah. Right. So that's the thing about it. The people that I have in my life, I call them my blessed pack. It's for individuals. I've asked for permission for them to be that in my life. Does that make sense?
Permission's a big word. I like you threw it in there. I asked for permission because some people are like, oh, I don't know if it's for me. So I like that you said I've asked for permission. Yeah. Right.
So because of that, right, I know that I can open up and talk about deeper things with them, right? But in the initial conversations with them, I didn't ask for that permission. I was just telling them a little bit some of the things that were going on, but I wasn't giving them everything. Because in that, it was, I hate to say it like this, but that was almost like a test period for me. Because I wanted to feel them out. I wanted to feel their body language, feel their energy, and see where they were. And each one of them, we always did the same thing. Which every last one of them, we prayed afterwards. So they listened to my little whatever I was talking about, and we prayed afterwards, boom. And then they kept it to themselves, and we was able to talk about whatever they was going through as well on the other side. So it was not just a one-sided thing. I'm like, boom, boom.
Yeah, I like that.
That's it. So again, it's not I'm gonna dump everything that I have on you, and then if you can't handle it, then you're not the right person. No.
Yeah, right.
If I'll say it like this, if my stuff that I have bottled up inside of me is causing me to act the way that I'm acting. Why would I think I can dump everything that I have on this person and have them not respond similar or even worse, right? So again, just a little bit, and then
that's a good perspective.
Does that make sense?
Oh, I totally get that. Yeah. I mean, I think we all have those moments. Just, I got to tell you something. Then someone is hearing all, they go, I don't know what to do with all this. I love that perspective. Like, how can I think if I can't handle this, you're going to handle all of this and absorb it? Because also everybody else is fighting their own, invisible battle going on in their own life. So to dump it on them that way would be difficult. That's a really cool framing of that. And I've had a lot of conversation. Never heard anybody frame it that way. It's well put. And then the next thing for me is going, okay, cool. I had this conversation. We figure out this thing has to happen. You eventually have to take a different action. There's going to be a different response. Maybe the way you handle teammates differently, maybe you handle a relationship differently, maybe you cut a relationship off. How do you find like that you take this stuff and can apply it to life? We talked about it. I understand this. I go, oh, I don't like this about myself. This has to change a little bit. How do you then start applying these changes?
Man, so you're talking about now where it goes from you being kind of incompetent about the things you need to change. And then you going all the way to the point to you being competent about this is what I need to do. And then you become not just competent, but you're conscious and competent on what you need to do going forward. Right. Mm-hmm. So I recognized that I couldn't continue to do what I was doing and have success. So I had to then research. So what can I do differently? One of the things that blessed me right off the bat was journaling. Mm-hmm. So for that, going back to the other question you asked, if you don't have that person, and I should have rephrased that, maybe you do not have that one person at the moment. Yeah. Journaling. I've journaled since every morning. Every morning I journal, and there's different versions to journaling. You're not just journaling all your bad things. There's a gratitude journal. There's a prayer journal. So you can use journaling however you see fit. But that has been one of the most powerful tools that I use in the beginning, because in that beginning time, when I'm just talking to the counselor, I'm not talking to anybody still about what I'm going through. This is between me and the counselor. And those individuals that I may have to speak to about the things that was poison to me that I had not confessed to anybody. So maybe someone hurt me and I needed to call that person up. So having those tough conversations. Yeah. But I still was not talking to anybody else about it. And so my journal became my refuge, that I can dive into that journal, write down what I'm thinking, write down some of the things that I'm feeling. And then what it did is it brought down my emotions. And my emotions became quiet. And then my vertical relationship, my spirit man began to speak loudly about some of the things I needed to start doing and some of the things I needed to stop doing, right? Yeah. So one of the things that I was doing is I was drinking too much, trying to mask the pain that I was going through with alcohol, right? So I needed to stop doing that. You mentioned cutting people off. Yeah, absolutely. Some of the people that I was indulging with some things with, those relationships had to be tossed to the side. So you do have to do things in order to have you in the space that you need to be in to get to where you want to be. Now, here's the other thing. Where did I want to be? Did I have a vision of it? And the answer is yes. I knew the man that I wanted to be. I knew the player that I wanted to be. I knew the friend that I wanted to be. So I had a vision of what it is and who it is I wanted to be. So now I have something to go after. I'm not just picking out of the air at something. I knew what I wanted. And then I just told you I'm writing it down. So not only am I having a vision, I'm writing my vision down. In the book of Habakkuk, it tells us to write your vision down, make it plain, right? So I had my vision and I wrote it down, making it plain, right? Yeah. So now I have direction and where I needed to head and some of the things I needed to start doing. And so I began to then use the thing that I'm blessed with. You also, because you played the game, got to the level that you got to, I began to use something that some people would find as, they don't like the word, and that's the word discipline. Yeah. I began to use my discipline. So when I when I do feel like I'm going into a space that would take me down a dark path of thinking, then I would quickly grab my fighting words, as I call them. This, one of my favorite scripture in the Bible is 2 Timothy 1:7. It says, "For the Lord did not give us a spirit of fear, but a spirit of power, love, and of a sound mind." So anytime that I start going into fear, I can't do this, I'm lacking in this, even on the field, I make a mistake on the football field. And the fear begin to rise up because I know the veterans are gonna be mad at me, right? They're gonna get on me for making a mistake. Coach is probably gonna chew me out, right? So now I get rocked on my heels, and I'm not gonna be aggressive. No, I begin to quote that. You did not give me a spirit of fear. If I have fear in me operating loudly, that means I'm operating outside of the grace and the power you've given me, because you've given me power, love, and a sound mind. So that means that I can do it, right? So then I began to quote these type of scriptures in the details I just gave you, because I would do it on the field in a split second. And that takes me off my heels and puts me back on my toes so I can attack. I do the same thing in life now, right? You get off your heels and just catching. No, now I want to step forward to be aggressive, to attack. And to know that I can do it. That's the last thing. I know that I can do it.
I like it, man. It's a whole, you just spit fire in like the last 10 minutes. There's a whole lot in there. Right? Cause I talk about, when people are in flow, I let them go, man. I'm like, I'm not going to interrupt and let this all just come flowing out because it needs to. What I gathered from this is you did at some point have this kind of feeling of, I don't want to call it heavy guilt, but there were some areas of like, I'm not living up to full capabilities. And you go, you know what? I got to unpack some things. I got to have these outlets, got some outlets. If I don't have an outlet, I have a cathartic area of journaling. And the whole thing is catharsis. How do I get this out of me so I can operate in a better fluid environment? Emotionally, we'll call it. Then you said, look, I found this stuff out. I got to start doing some things. It may not be perfect in terms of how things are operating, but I'm going to start using these exercises, these practices I can apply to allow me to play in that full power. Because I think when you operate in fear, not only are you operating out of your power, but like you're not even showing up in the way you're supposed to. Therefore, you create more moments that create more of that emotion because you're operating from that emotion. You create more of the emotion, right? So it becomes a self-perpetuating cycle in a negative direction. So you unpacked all this stuff, man. I love the idea of journaling. I journal as well. And I think people talk about it, but they don't actually talk about the practice of it. And it's not something you do today and it fixes it today. Like it's not this immediate gratification thing. The last stage of the shift method is sustainability. Like, can I sustain it? Because the sustaining aspect leads to the big word you said, which is discipline, which I love the word because it's, disciple means to follow. Plan is kind of like plan. So to follow a plan. But if you have no plan, you can't get back on it. You can't be disciplined. So when you had these moments of going and you had these, let's say the sustained moments of doing this, what were the things along the way that popped up and, let's say challenge your discipline? And what were some of your go-tos, maybe besides journaling, like maybe mental things, were there people, was there an alignment inside? Like what was the thing that held you to a place to snap back into the flow when you got off? Because I think people have the issue of, I'm doing good, I make a mistake, I'm off for a month, a year, whatever it is. How'd you get back to the point of like getting back to it quicker?
Oh man, it's a couple of things. Wow. First thing I'll give you is this. So if you expect to always have success and to never fall, then you're on the wrong earth. You're in the wrong territory. You're in the wrong space. You're going to come up short. We all do. We all fall short. So that's, first of all, give yourself the okay and the permission. Yes, I will fall at some point. Not trying to, but I will at some point, right? I look at it like this. If you have fallen and it's something that has really hurt you, it's nothing wrong with us. Like when someone gets knocked out, boxers, I'll use this as an analogy. When they get knocked down and not out, a lot of times, what does the corner tell them to do? Stay down.
Stay down.
Stay down. Take the count, right? 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5, you get on your knee. 5, 6, 7, you're back standing up. So sometimes, you might have to take a weekend, right? Yeah. Give yourself permission for a day, to lick your wounds a little bit, even into the weekend, right? But here's the thing. On Monday, I'm rolling.
Back to it.
Because I've already put it in my mind. Yeah, I'm going to give myself a little time to lick some wounds. I might eat the ice cream or whatever my guilty pleasure, whatever the case may be, right? But Monday, when Monday comes, when I wake up Monday morning, I'm going to be giving my gratitude in the morning. I'm going to be breathing. I'm going to be meditating. I'm going to be reading my journal and writing in my journal, right? I'm going to be praying. I'm going to go right back to my routine. And I'm going to expect to have success, just like I was expecting to have success before I failed. Does that make sense?
100%. You know, I find this is a common thing for successful people. And I think this is what I'm pulling out now. There is this space where, and the discipline does this, I'm not operating from the emotion. I have emotion and I feel it, but if I operate from that, I'm not going to get back up. I think what I'm hearing from you is like there's specific actions that are set out that I will get into. And one of the guys I interviewed years ago, Dan Nitro from remember American Gladiator? Nitro.
Yep.
He's awesome. He's a good dude, man. He says, "Hey, I've always learned that action ends suffering." And I go, "Ooh, I like that," because essentially what it is, it's like I may be suffering this moment. You're talking about licking my wounds. I'm suffering right now. But I got to get back to the actions that get me into a new space. If I sit here and wallow in the emotion of it, I won't take the actions. But discipline is following actions I have preset to follow, which the more action you take, the better emotion you get, you come out of it. And I love that you're saying these are the things I went to. Do you have a few like go-to actions? I got the journaling. Is there exercise you might do, the meditation? What kind of meditation? What are some things that have worked really well for you action-wise to pull you out of those holes when you get into them?
The first thing that I would say is the power of the pause. The power of the pause. Okay. So the breathing. So you're taking that deep inhalation, that gut, expanding those shoulders, everything, making sure those lungs completely fill. Hold it for a second. Then you blow out longer. Then you inhale. You do that a couple of times. And then immediately in that space, I begin to think on the success I've had in my life. So some gratitude, some things that I'm thankful for. Yeah. So the thing that I just did is not who I am. So I recognize that. So I failed, but I'm not a failure. I failed in this endeavor, but I am not a failure. And so bringing up that attitude, that gratitude takes me to a space of understanding that this thing is temporary. It shall not last. It's just for a season, right? And then because I'm out of the emotion of it, then I can recognize and I can ask myself, so what can I learn in this? How can I grow in this space? How can I get better because of it? How is this thing going to make me stronger and wiser for the next opportunity down the road, right? So again, that's that. It's a quick thing. Sometimes it does not happen just that quickly, but I recognize that your mind can't operate, your brain can't occupy two thoughts at the same time. The one that has the most emotion attached to it, the thought that is the one that your brain is going to lean towards and your body is going to produce the chemicals into the body off of, right? So I bring up that one. I bring up, my first going to football, right? I bring up the, my rookie year, my first start, Monday Night Football, Green Bay, out there first time at Lambeau Field, and I'm so nervous, excited at the same time. But in my mind, man, I did it. I'm in the national doggone foot. You feel all those in it, all that emotion coming to me. So again, when I think on that, I can then allow that other thought to just drift off. I'm not, and here's the other thing I'll say, I'm not trying to not see the thought. I recognize that I made a mistake, or I recognize the thought, but I'm not going to dwell on it. I'm going to make room for it without it taking over the room. And then I'm going to allow it to move on, because I'm going to replace it, with a powerful thought, right? So this is an actionable thing that I've done numerous times by replacing that thought. And I do it so often, that power of that pause. I learned to do this, to be honest with you, speaking in front of the media in Philadelphia. Because they would ask you some questions about your
They have to, right? They got great tension, make some headlines, right? Huh?
But in that moment, even though I may not like the question, I recognize that if I answered back to this reporter in an angry tone, guess who's going to see that and think that I'm talking to them? The fans.
Yeah, true.
Right? So taking that deep breath. And the other thing that I would say is, it's not, especially in a conversation, you have to be comfortable with silence. Just that silence right there. Be comfortable with that. Because when I take that deep breath after that question is asked, I'll take that deep breath and there's complete silence. And I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Because in that moment, once again, I'm not going to answer from emotion.
Yeah.
I'm going to answer the question the way that I think the question could have been asked, so I can talk to the fans who I'm actually talking to when I talk to the camera in a way that is respectful. Does this make sense? I do the exact same thing in life, period. When I'm talking to my wife, and I say it like this now: the conversation will go where my response takes it.
The emotional
Does that
aspect
make
to
sense?
it. Yeah, you're talking my language for sure. It's always an emotional response that if someone goes up and I go up with them, we keep climbing. But if they go up and I can stay down here, they come back to my level. But you actually have a client of mine. He's a former Spec Ops guy. He was overseas in Iraq defending like I think the American ambassador. But he talks about this thing called the tactical pause. It's legit. Like when they're about to go in to bust a door down, they hold, set, breathe, go. And like they're in control. And that pause, like when I'm a speaker, I speak on stage all day. That pause is powerful. So I can see you do it with the reporters, like the pause, the whole room probably just feels like, oh, what's going on? But if you can hold that, it puts you in such a space of power. The words carry more weight and I think it flows smoother. And yeah, dude, I totally get what you're saying, man. It all aligns because it's human. It's a human skill. Right? It's not this thing that's just tied to talking. This is the ability to breathe. And then what you're talking about is this thing where your focus goes, your energy flows.
Absolutely.
Right. So if my brain's over here, like, oh, I'm doing this and I'm thinking about the negative, well, you're going to try to do this with this negative thought because it's all you're focused on. I used to, my wife, I don't know how she talked me into it, but we do triathlons. I'm not built for triathlons, man. I'm a linebacker. I'm like 6'1", 25, dude. I'm not supposed to be swimming with a damn wetsuit, but I was riding a bike one time in this triathlon we were doing, this half Ironman, and I was looking at the fence and I'm dead tired. And I'm like, I don't want to hit the fence. I don't want to hit the fence. And next thing I know, I'm in the fence. It's like this, I'm just driving in. So what you're talking about is, the brain's there, we'll go. But if you control your thoughts, you pause, breathe, the focus is here. Now you can control the direction you're going vastly differently.
Yeah, and I love that. I love that analogy. You're talking about looking at the fence. It was the same thing as a DB, right? Even in pass coverage as a linebacker. When you look back at the ball, if you don't keep contact with the receiver, guess where are you gonna drift back to? Back inside. Yeah. Why? Because you're looking back inside. So we're taught what? You can look back, but keep contact with that receiver as you're running down, so you won't drift back inside, right? So it's the same thing. It's that same thing. So
it draws us, man.
You're focused, and then you can be focused in that area, because maybe the person is saying some negative stuff, so I'm focused on that person, but I'm not finna drift down inside to where they are. I'm gonna stay contacted with myself to stay kind of separated from the emotion of the conversation. So I can, to your point, as you got into it from a neurological standpoint, so I can continue to speak from my cortex, right? Instead of my what they call it, the reptilian brain, right?
Yeah. But emotion's high, intelligence is low, they say. Yes. I'm all spiked up. I don't even talk. I say things I probably want to pull back, good and bad. If I'm mad, I'll say bad things. If I'm happy, I like buy stuff. And like everybody, round of beer is like, oh, but I'm broke, man. I don't have money for that. Hey, I do want to, it's all great stuff. And I want to know, I want to transition, we'll call it the book, right? I want to know how this all came to be. Like, you know what? I got this in me. Obviously a wealth of knowledge, wealth of experience, places that people would only dream to go and be and hang out. How was this something where it's time to put in a book? It's time to take this, put in words, give it to the world. What was the process? Then I'd love to know who the book is for and what that person will get from it.
Yeah. First of all, I never thought I would write a book. Never thought I would write a book. In the book, I talk about how for the longest time I had a small speech impediment, stutter.
Oh, really?
And it got worse when I thought someone would hear it. I would be conscious of it and I would stutter worse. So I wasn't real good when it came to public speaking. Because of, as I've mentioned in this podcast, I was emotional. I wear my emotions on my sleeve. So sometimes my brain begins to go faster than my tongue could go, and I would mess up that way, which is once again embarrassing, which would make me not want to talk. So for me to come up and say that I'm going to, first of all, be a public speaker and now write a book, there's no way. But this was the Lord put this on my heart to do. He put it on my heart to do. When I was being interviewed time and time again doing the Hall of Fame ceremonies, right? And people were constantly coming up to me asking me these questions and the fans coming up, and it really felt to me like they thought that everything was constantly lining up in my life. Like I've had that success, so everything else was just smooth road getting to where you are. And I'm like, you guys have no idea, do you? No, that's right, you don't. How could you have an idea? Yeah. And so literally when I was an executive for the Philadelphia Eagles, during the Super Bowl run, when we won the Super Bowl, I was an executive during that time. And as the parade was happening, I'm on the float with the parade and we're celebrating. My heart was changing. And my heart was changing to do some of the things that I was doing in the building, outside of the building, like life coaching and things of that nature inside of the building, but also some of the things that I've grown through in my life. I didn't say go through, I said the things that I've grown through and the perspective that I have and how I develop those things. And I just told you the story of my father. Now, for the person who may hear that and be like, oh, well, that's not a big deal. All he did was tell you to go out there and give your hardest, go your hardest and not finish what you start. That's not a big deal. It's a huge deal when you believe it, you take it and you utilize it, and it becomes your life, like one of the pillars of your life, right? Mm-hmm. Sometimes we don't recognize that some of the pillars, good or bad in our lives, have come from when we were young.
True. Yeah.
From the people in our lives who usually had some type of authority in our lives back then, things that they told us, asked, or acted out in front of us. We've taken those things and they have shaped the way that we do things to this day, right? Definitely. So the book is not necessarily a football book. It has football in it, but it literally tells you and shows you how this young dude who was was respected out of Jacksonville, Florida, developed a mindset. And I talked about Coach Humphrey, and if you get a chance to read it. My mom, my dad, their principles, I applied that to a dude who used negative reinforcement like candy. Like he would never tell you you've done anything good, ever. Yeah. And he ran us to death. Now, because I was not going to quit, because I'm going to be first in line, because I'm going to fight the way that I've been taught, he developed this in me, that if he can't break me, nobody can. So that mindset I took to Clemson, I took to the league, right? So no matter what you do to me, no matter what exercises you tell me to do, no matter how many miles you tell me to run, you can't break me. You know why? Because he couldn't break me. Now, again, this is what has been developed in me as a young child. I go back to that conversation again. What have you learned in your life? What are the things that you're holding on to that you need to get rid of and develop a new mindset about who you want to be going forward, right? So all of those things and then some is in the book of how I did it. And it is my hopes that you see how I did it and read about some of the funny stories that are in there, how I came about recognizing some of these things. And you develop that mindset that you can make time in your schedule to sit down and write out and ask yourself some of these questions so that you can begin to reframe your past so your present will become a powerful place for you to go after a strong future.
I like it, man. I love it, because it's honestly the backbone of what we do. Because for me, mindset's a powerful thing. It's a lot of the things that we don't comprehend are necessary. Not so much, I don't think, at a conscious level, because we'll get into moments in life prepared for, had no idea what's coming. Everything's going crazy. And you don't actually think at a certain, I think we almost instinctually do stuff, but we will instinctually do stuff that's in alignment with who we are. This is who I am. I'm not the guy that quits. He couldn't break me. There's no way. You know how many years I've been going without somebody break me? I'm not going to give up all these years of not being broke for this moment right now. So I push more, right? And there's this mentality we align to, which we call mindset, right? I call identity to a certain depth too. It's like, it's who I am to do X, Y, and Z. But what I love that you're saying is you can create this no matter where you're at, no matter what you've done, whatever's happened in the past. It's just a matter of start today, and it's going to be a build, but eventually there's a year under your belt, 2 years under your belt, 3 years under the belt, and it builds and progresses to something cool. Man.
And that's powerful. That's powerful. Yeah. And to recognize this, I've heard it said like this, that small hinges swing big doors, right? So sometimes
True.
it's a small thing that you do, small incremental things that you may do in the beginning to begin to swing that big door. And then you begin to pile on to change this other thing and then change that other thing. Because it's not going to be a week. You're not going to do things for a week and you're going to have it, right? It's going to take some time, a couple of weeks into a month for you to really cement that thing as a part of you. It seeps into your subconscious mind till it becomes something that kind of runs automatically no matter what happens, right? And then you add that other thing to it and then that other thing to it. But it's smart. So it starts off with that small thing. The first thing it starts off with is a thought, though. You gotta work on that thinking. I call it that stinking thinking. You got to work on that stinking thinking.
I like it. So that's actually, I usually have like a couple final questions, and one has to do with like, what's the one thing people can do now? Because I always want to give people something to take away. There's a lot you talked about. They should have taken notes. You guys should have taken notes. You can go back and re-listen. But if you were to culminate this to like, I'm sitting in a coffee shop, I got one thing to tell you. Here's that one thing that changed your life. What would that be?
Man, if there's one thing. If there is one thing that I would tell anyone is that it's very unlikely for you to reach a destination, a great destination, if you do not know where it is you want to go. If I don't have a vision to where I want to go, I didn't say how to get there. I said, if I don't have a vision, if I don't have a goal, if I don't have something that, not necessarily goal, but if I don't have a big vision that I'm going after, then I'm going to wind up somewhere down the road, and it's probably going to benefit somebody else more than me, because it'll be somebody else's vision of me that I would then follow, and it will benefit them more than it benefits me. So that vision, what does it look like?
I've never heard of frame that.
Now, here's the problem with that thought. Sometimes if you've grown up in a harsh environment, if I had not seen outside of Jacksonville and I only saw what was in my neighborhood, it would be extremely hard for me to have the vision that I had in order to be a Hall of Famer, right? That would go against who I believe myself to be, right?
Yeah, out of character.
But when I begin to look, this is my vision now. I'll still want this. I'll still want to be a professional. I didn't necessarily say a professional football player. I said I wanted to be a professional something. That was my goal. I thought it was going to be basketball. It turned out to be football. But I wanted to be a professional something. But that was my vision. So when that vision happened, this is what happened, start to happen. Those people that would not help me get to that, I had to stop hanging around. And that was two of the dudes that I lost to the streets. I couldn't hang around them anymore. Why? Because I wanted to be a professional. They wanted to be a professional, but it wasn't the type of professional I was talking about. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Now, that began to separate me from those individuals. And then I began to look at individuals that were having the success that I wanted. So it was a modeling thing. I've heard it said like this: success leaves trails. So I began to look at these people that are having success. What are they doing? What are the things that they're doing? How are they working out? What are the mindsets that they have, right? So I'm taking mental notes. Okay, boom. I like that. I like that. And so when you have that vision and you want it, and that's the thing that you want to go after, I'm telling you, when you write it down, not just have it up here, because we have anywhere from, let's say, 10,000 to 100,000 thoughts. 10,000, 100,000 thoughts a day. That's what people will tell you.
Yeah.
If you don't write stuff down, it'll stay up there with all of those other negative thoughts. Yeah, and it will not become a priority, because if everything is a priority, then nothing is a priority, right?
True.
So you gotta write that thing down, and then you gotta come back to it and just look at it daily. One of the things that I did when I was playing is I had my goals, my vision of what a successful year would look for me every year. Yeah. And on that card, every year it would be something. One of them would be miss no more than 2 tackles this year. That was one of my goals. And there were many years that I only missed 2 tackles.
It's crazy.
Because I wrote it down, and I was constantly looking at it, because it was in my playbook. So I had to pass it every day. So I was constantly looking at the things that I've written down as things that I want to go after. This is the vision of a safety for me. Having these type of stats in all of these columns. right? So it wasn't just my athleticism, people. It was literally me writing down this vision of what I saw success to be.
Yeah.
And then me constantly looking over it and then going back and judging myself every week. Did I come up? Did I do what I said I was going to do? Right? So the accountability was not just an outward thing. It was an inward discipline for me to handle specific things a specific way as it pertains to reaching that vision that I had for myself. So that's what I would say. I know that was a long one, but
that's a good one, though. And I love that you touched on the people, because at the end of the day, people can't hold you to a standard. I believe that we are not the average of the people we surround ourselves with. I believe we're the average of the expectations of the people we surround ourselves with. And when you have people around you that say, hey, our expectations are this, and Brian, you said this, we're going to hold you to this, right? It elevates how you show up, because we're pack, humans, we operate in tribes. I've got to be accepted by my tribe. And if my tribe accepts this, I can't play down here. I got to be up here. And so you're saying is set the vision, be around people with probably similar visions or who will hold me to mine, and then live in that. And when you do, it'll be uncomfortable, but eventually you start moving in that direction, dude. I love it. I love it, man.
It's supposed to be uncomfortable.
Yeah, it is.
It's supposed to be uncomfortable. Growth is not. Growth is painful. To ask any woman that's been pregnant and had a baby.
Yeah, right.
Growing. Yeah. That's why they call it growing pains, because growth is painful.
It hurts, man. It's like crabs. Yeah,
it's not going to be pleasant.
Like crabs do. They say crabs actually, the way they do is they feel the shell getting too small for their growth. They actually go behind a pier. They shed the entire shell and regrow that bad boy, but it all happens from the pain of being too small. If not, the crab would die. So the growth is necessity. It's necessary, and it also hurts. Dude, two final questions. First one is, how can people find the book and find you?
Man, so you can go to briandawkins.com. The book is briandawkins.com. You can get a signed copy or a regular copy. Also has some gear you can go buy as well there.
I like it.
And some other things you can go check it out. Some motivational things on there as well.
Nice. Cool. Ready for this final question? This one you can take wherever you want. Somebody asked me this question one time at a Starbucks and it threw me for a little loop. So I've asked this question every episode now. What promise did God make to the world when he created you?
Wow. What promise did God make to the world? What promise did God make to the world when he created me? That the passion that my child will operate in will be something that will bless those who ever come in contact with it.
That's well said, man. That's well said. I'm glad you went that way with passion, because even the cover of your book shows passion. Like that's and everybody that had ever written on you, and I've watched them, I'm going to research this man. There's never been anything short like the way this dude played was outside of his own damn mind. Like I loved it, because that's a passion.
And that's the thing that's me. Yeah. So we talked a little bit earlier before we got on, is that your identity, right? So the identity of who you are when a lot of guys stop playing the game of football. So I recognized that the game of football was what I did. It was not who I was. So what I was blessed to be able to do because of that, having that understanding, is I was able to take me, put it into the game of football. And when the football was over with, I took me and now I'm putting it in something else. So that passion, that same drive. And, when I go on stage, I'm not this dude.
I know. I feel it. That's the same I am.
I am not this dude. I'm a lot calmer than I am when I go to give
you got it, though. I totally get it. So, yeah.
Weapon X still lives inside of me. So I want people to be in my huddle, to be one of my teammates, right, when I go to speak in front of people. But again, that's who I am. That passion, that respectful, driven, that insightful passion, that's a part of me.
I dig it. I totally get it. I tell people, I usually operate every day around a 3 or 4 in terms of how I'm meeting you in public. But at stages, I find the 10, man. I let him out of the box. It's the only place that he needs to show up. And I feel like if I don't give the audience that, or the people that, I'm robbing them of the gift of me. So I totally get it, man. Yeah, exactly. Dude, hey, thank you so much for hanging out. Seriously appreciate your time, man. I know you're a busy dude. You're not only that, but you're a guy who's accomplished vastly more than most humans, but done it with a humble heart. I love the way that you even show out for not only this, but also your family, how you praise your wife. Those are seriously humongous things that more people need to see and need to do. So, man, you're a shining example of a solid human who's accomplished some damn cool things. So I appreciate you. Those of you guys who have tuned in, thank you for hanging out with us. You could have been anywhere else, but you chose to come hang out with us, and we appreciate that. I do know that this episode has a ton of golden nuggets. If you found any value, share the episode. There's going to be someone in the world that you probably know needs to hear this that you might be too close to. Share with them, or just share it out to the ethers. You never know who's going to grab this, and that one single share could change your life. So please do that. Also, make sure you go pick up this man's book. Check out all the cool things he has, briandawkins.com. Outside of that, as always, make the most of your awe shift moments so you can make shift happen. Anthony Trucks and Brian Dawkins signing off. Hey, thank you for tuning in to the Awe Shift podcast. I pray that we gave something amazing to your life. And if you found this episode served you in some way, I would love if you could share it with people you know, people you love, as well as your community, because you never know who needs that simple little seed that can grow into something amazing for their life. And the actual training doesn't stop here. If you want your free copy of the show notes sent to you after every episode so you can get the major points consolidated down, simply go to textanthony.com and message the word notes. Till next time, make shift happen.